The great hall of the Galactic Council was bigger than most cities. Ships from 100 different worlds floated in the space around the massive station. Inside, thousands of beings from across the galaxy sat in their seats, all talking at once. The noise was loud enough to shake the walls. Ambassador Kate Morrison stood at the human section, her hands pressed against the metal railing. She had been on this station for 3 years now, but she had never seen the council in such panic. The message that came through just an hour ago had changed everything. Queen Zephyra was gone. The ruler of the Andorian Empire, the most powerful woman in the known galaxy, had been taken by the Void Reapers. These were not ordinary pirates. They were something much worse. Half machine, half living creature, they took what they wanted and left nothing behind but empty ships floating in. Space. Kate looked around the hall. The Altarians were the first to speak. Their leader stood up on 6 thin legs, his blue skin shining under the lights. "The situation is clear," he said in his cold voice. "Queen Zephyra has been taken to the Crimson Nebula. Our computers show that rescue is not possible." A low rumble came from the Draknari section. These were the warriors of the galaxy, beings who looked like walking mountains covered in thick gray skin. Their commander slammed his fist on his desk. "My ships are the strongest in the galaxy, but even we cannot fly into that death cloud. The radiation will kill us all." The Celestials floated in their section, their bodies glowing with soft light. They never spoke with words, only with thoughts that others could hear. Their message was clear and cold. "We have run the numbers. Any ship that enters the Crimson Nebula has a 0.3 PERCE and T chance of coming back alive. It cannot be done." Kate felt sick. She had met Queen Zephyra once, 2 years ago at a peace meeting. The queen was tall and beautiful, with silver skin that seemed to glow from within. But more than that, she was kind. She had spent hours talking to Kate about Earth, asking about human customs and food. She had even laughed at Kate's jokes, which most aliens never did. Now she was trapped somewhere in the most dangerous place in the galaxy. The Crimson Nebula was a cloud of gas and radiation that stretched across 3 star systems. It was red, like blood, and hot like fire. Ships that went in came out as empty hulls with their crews cooked inside. The Void Reapers had made their base there because no one was crazy enough to follow them. Captain Jake Sullivan sat in the back of the human section. He was not supposed to be here. His ship, the Starfire, was docked for repairs after a fight with smugglers near the Outer Rim. But when the emergency call came, he had walked right into the council chamber like he owned the place. Jake was not a big man, but he had the kind of presence that made people notice him. His brown hair was always messy, and his uniform never looked quite right. But his eyes were sharp and steady, and when he looked at you, you knew he was seeing everything. He listened to the alien leaders talk about why the rescue was impossible. The Altarians showed charts and graphs. The Draknari talked about honor and acceptable losses. The Celestials shared their cold calculations about probability and survival rates. Behind Jake sat the rest of his crew. Chief Engineer Danny Wright was a thin man with quick hands and a quicker mind. He could fix anything that broke and improve anything that worked. Navigation Officer Lucy Hayes was small and quiet, but she could fly a ship through an asteroid, field with her eyes closed. Weapons Specialist Ryan Cooper was built like a boxer and had the attitude to match. He never met a fight he did not want to win. Dr. Amanda Foster sat next to Communications Officer Steve Miller. Amanda was the ship's doctor and science officer, a woman who could cure diseases and build weapons with equal skill. Steve was the kind of person who could talk his way out of anything, and if talking did not work, he could jam every communication system within 100 miles. There were 6 more humans in Jake's crew, all of them good at their jobs, and all of them completely crazy by the standards of the rest of the galaxy. The debate went on for 2 hours. Species after species stood up to explain why rescue was impossible. The Zephyrians, Queen Zephyra's own people, sat in their section and wept. Their ships were fast and beautiful, but they were built for peace, not war. They had no weapons that could fight the Void Reapers. The Corvin Trade Federation offered to pay a ransom. The Reapers had sent a message demanding the location of 3 secret hyperspace routes in exchange for the Queen's life. But everyone knew that giving the Reapers those routes would let them attack any world in the galaxy. They would use the information to destroy billions of lives. Admiral Lisa Carter, the head of the human military, stood up to speak. She was a tall woman with gray hair and tired eyes. Humanity offers its support to any rescue mission approved by this council, she said. But we understand the risks involved. That was when Jake Sullivan stood up. We'll do it, he said. His voice was not loud, but it carried across the huge chamber. Thousands of beings turned to look at him. Give us the coordinates. Humanity will bring your queen home. The chamber went silent. Even the constant hum of the station's engines seemed to quiet down. Admiral Carter looked at Jake with wide eyes. Captain Sullivan, you are out of order. Sit down. But Jake kept standing. The way I see it, you all have been sitting here for hours talking about why it can't be done. Meanwhile, Queen Zephyra is sitting in a prison cell waiting for someone to save her. The Altarian leader made a sound like static. Human, your species is known for being reckless, but this is madness. The Crimson Nebula will destroy your ship. Maybe, Jake said with a shrug, but maybe not. We won't know until we try. The Draknari commander leaned forward. 47 Reaper ships guard their prison vessel. You have 1 ship. How do you expect to fight them all? Ryan Cooper stood up behind Jake and grinned. Sounds like fair odds to me. A ripple of shock went through the chamber. Several alien species made sounds that their translators could not convert to words. The Celestial's mental voice was filled with confusion. The humans are not calculating correctly. This is mathematically impossible. Dr. Foster stood up next. Maybe your math is wrong, she said calmly. Maybe there are some things that numbers can't measure. One by one, the rest of Jake's crew stood up. Danny Wright, Lucy Hayes, Steve Miller, and the others. 12 humans standing in a chamber filled with thousands of the most advanced beings in the galaxy. The Zephyrian representative, a woman with the same silver skin as her queen, looked at the humans with something like hope in her large eyes. You would really risk your lives for our queen? You barely know her. Jake looked around the chamber at all the alien faces staring at him. Some looked shocked, some looked confused, and some looked like they thought he was insane. That's what humans do, he said. We help people who need help. It doesn't matter if we know them or not. The vote was quick. The Altarians voted against the mission. The Draknari abstained. The Celestials voted against. But the smaller species, the ones who had been conquered and freed, the ones who had been helped by humans before, they voted yes. The motion passed. By 3 votes as the council session ended and the beings began to leave, the Zephyrian representative approached Jake. Her eyes were bright with tears. The prison ship is called the Damnation. It sits in the heart of the nebula, surrounded by the Reaper fleet. No one has ever escaped from it. Jake nodded. There's a first time for everything. Admiral Carter walked over, her face dark with worry. Jake, I can't stop you from doing this, but I can't help you either. The council vote gives you permission, but not support. You'll be on your own. We're used to being on our own, Jake said. He looked at his crew, all of them ready to follow him into the most dangerous place in the galaxy. Don't worry about us, Admiral. Just have a cold beer waiting for when we get back. As the humans left the chamber, alien voices whispered behind them. The same words were repeated in dozens of languages. The humans are absolutely insane. Jake heard them and smiled. Being called crazy by the galaxy's smartest species was just another day at the Office for Humanity. The human colony of New Terra sat on the edge of the galaxy like a small light in the darkness. It was not the biggest colony or the richest, but it was home to some of the best shipbuilders and engineers in known space. When Captain Jake Sullivan brought his crew back from the Galactic Council, word spread fast. The Starfire sat in the main docking bay, looking like it had seen better days. The ship was not pretty. It was built for work, not for show. Gray metal hull, thick armor plating, and weapons that stuck out at odd angles. But it was fast and it was tough, and most important of all, it was human. Jake stood in the ship's main meeting room with his crew gathered around a table. The holographic display showed the Crimson Nebula in all its deadly glory. Red clouds of gas swirled in patterns that hurt to look at. Radiation readings that would kill most species in minutes. And somewhere in the middle of it all, a prison. Ship called the Damnation. Chief Engineer Danny Wright shook his head as he studied the numbers on his tablet. Captain, I've run these calculations 5 times. The radiation levels in that nebula will cook our electronics faster than we can fix them. Our shields won't last an hour. Then we'll have to work fast, Jake said. Danny ran his hands through his hair. Sir, you don't understand. This isn't about working fast. The radiation will burn through our hull. It will fry our computers. It will turn our weapons into scrap metal. We'll be flying blind in a tin can that's falling apart around us. Navigation Officer Lucy Hayes pulled up another display. This one showed the tactical situation around the prison ship. 47 Void Reaper vessels in a perfect defensive formation. Each one was armed with enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Even if we somehow make it through the radiation, we still have to deal with this. She pointed at the center of the formation. The Damnation was 3 times the size of their ship, covered in armor and weapons. It looked like a flying fortress designed by someone who really did not want visitors. Weapons specialist Ryan Cooper leaned back in his chair and laughed. Well, when you put it like that, it sounds almost impossible. Almost? Dr. Amanda Foster asked. Yeah, almost. If it was completely impossible, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about it. Ryan grinned and cracked his knuckles. Besides, impossible just means no one has been crazy enough to try it yet. Communications Officer Steve Miller had been quiet during the meeting, but now he spoke up. I've been listening to Reaper communications for the past 6 hours. They're not expecting anyone to come after them. Why would they? No sane species would fly into that radiation storm. Good thing we're not sane. Jake said. Dr. Foster had been working on her tablet while the others talked. Now she looked up with bright eyes. I think I have an idea. It's completely insane, but it might work. She stood up and walked to the main display. Her fingers moved across the controls, bringing up a detailed scan of their ship's hull. The radiation in the nebula is mostly gamma and beta particles. Our shields can't stop them. But what if we don't try to stop them? Come again? Danny asked. What if we use them? Amanda continued. Look, our ship's hull is made of durasteel with a carbon fiber matrix. If we channel the life support power into the deflector array and use the entire hull as a giant antenna, we might be able to absorb the radiation and convert it into usable energy. The room went quiet. Even by human standards, this was a crazy idea. You want to turn our ship into a lightning rod, Lucy said slowly. Exactly. Instead of fighting the radiation, we ride it like a wave. Danny stared at her for a long moment. Then he started laughing. You know what? That's so crazy it might actually work. But we'll need to reroute every power system on the ship. And if we make one mistake, we'll all be fried. I can handle the power systems, Danny said. But what about weapons? If we're using all our power just to stay alive, how do we fight 47 ships? Steve Miller grinned. That's where my idea comes in. What if we use the radiation as a weapon? He pulled up his own display, showing the ship's cargo bay. We rigged the cargo bay to explode at just the right moment. All that stored radiation gets released in one massive electromagnetic pulse. It won't destroy the Reaper ships, but it will scramble their electronics long enough for us to get past them. And then what? Lucy asked. Even if we make it to the prison ship, how do we get inside? The damnation has shields that could stop a fleet. Jake had been listening to all of this with a small smile on his face. We don't go around the shields. We go through them. Sir, the damnation is built like a fortress, right? Thick armor, powerful shields, weapons pointing in every direction. But it's designed to fight other ships. It's not designed to fight something that's already inside the shields. Ryan Cooper's eyes lit up. A boarding action. We ram right through their shields and land on their hull. Won't work, Annie said. The impact would destroy us. Not if we do it right, Amanda said. She was getting excited now, the way she always did when she figured out a problem. What if we use the ship's emergency landing system? It's designed to survive crashes on planets. If we modify it, reinforce the front of the ship, we turn the Starfire into a giant bullet, Jake finished. We punch through their shields and land on their hull like a tick on a dog. The crew stared at him. Even for humans, this was pushing the limits of sanity. Let me get this straight, Lucy said slowly. We're going to fly into a radiation storm that will cook us alive, fight through a fleet of 47 ships using an electromagnetic pulse bomb, ram through the shields of the most secure prison in the galaxy, and then board a ship full of cybernetic killers. That's about the size of it, Jake said. And our chances of survival? The Celestials said 0.3%. Lucy nodded thoughtfully. I like those odds. The next 18 hours were the busiest in the ship's history. Danny Wright and his engineering team tore apart half the ship and rebuilt it. They rerouted power cables, installed new antenna arrays, and reinforced the hull with every piece of spare metal they could find. Amanda Foster worked with the weapons team to build their electromagnetic pulse bomb. It was not elegant work. They took apart 3 torpedo warheads, combined them with the ship's backup generators, and added every piece of radioactive material they could find. The result looked like something a mad scientist would build in his basement. Steve Miller rewrote the communication systems to handle the radiation interference. He also prepared dozens of false signals and fake distress calls, anything that might confuse the Reapers for a few crucial seconds. Ryan Cooper and his weapons team loaded every gun they had and built a few new ones from spare parts. If they were going to board the damnation, they would need firepower. Lots of it. Lucy Hayes studied the navigation data until she knew every radiation storm and gas cloud in the nebula. She would have to fly through hell itself, and she would have to do it blind. Jake walked through the ship, checking on his crew. They all knew this was probably a one-way trip. The odds of success were so low that they barely registered on any computer, but not one of them complained. Not one of them asked to stay behind. Word of their mission had spread through New Terra. Other humans came to watch the preparations. Some brought food, others brought spare parts or ammunition. A few brought bottles of whiskey and beer, because if you were going to die, you might as well have a drink. First Admiral Carter arrived on the second day. She found Jake in the engine room, helping Danny install the new radiation collectors. I've been ordered to stop you, she said. Jake looked up from his work. Are you going to? Lisa Carter looked at the chaos around her. Human engineers crawling through access tunnels, sparks flying from welding torches, and the constant sound of hammering and drilling. It looked like organized madness. The Galactic Council is having second thoughts, she said. Some species are saying this mission will just get Queen Zephyra killed along with your crew. Maybe they're right, Jake said, but maybe they're wrong. And as long as there's a chance, we have to try. The Admiral nodded slowly. That's what I told the Council. She handed him a datapad. Official orders. You have full authority to attempt this rescue. Whatever you need, you get. Jake smiled. What we need is for everyone to stay out of our way and let us work. On the third day, they were ready. The Starfire looked different now. Antenna arrays stuck out from every surface. The front of the ship had been reinforced with extra armor plating. The cargo bay had been converted into a giant bomb. It was ugly and dangerous and completely insane. Perfect for humans. Jake gathered his crew one last time before they launched. 12 people standing in a circle, about to attempt something that every computer in the galaxy said was impossible. Anyone want to change their mind? He asked. Ryan Cooper raised his hand. Yeah, I've got something to say. Jake waited. When we pull this off, I want the biggest stake on New Terra. And I mean the biggest one they've got. The crew laughed, and the tension broke. They were scared, sure. Only an idiot wouldn't be scared. But they were also excited. This was what humans did best. When everyone else gave up, when the math said no, when the smart money ran away, humans stepped forward and said, "Hold my beer." As the Starfire lifted off from New Terra, thousands of people watched from the ground. The ship rose into the star-filled sky, heading toward a red glow on the horizon. The edge of the Crimson Nebula looked like the mouth of a monster. Red gas clouds swirled in patterns that seemed to move with their own life. Lightning crackled between the clouds, bright enough to be seen from millions of miles away. And somewhere, in the middle of all that chaos, Queen Zephyra waited for rescue. Captain Jake Sullivan sat in his command chair aboard the Starfire, watching the nebula grow larger on the main screen. Behind him, his crew worked at their stations with quiet focus. They had been flying toward this moment for 6 hours, and now it was time to find out if their crazy plan would work. Radiation levels are climbing, Dr. Amanda Foster reported. From her science station. We're still in the safe zone, but not for long. Chief Engineer Danny Wright's voice came through the communication system from the engine room. All systems are ready, Captain. The radiation collectors are online, and the hull is charged. We're as ready as we'll ever be. Navigation Officer Lucy Hayes had her hands on the flight controls. She had been studying the nebula's patterns for days, looking for the safest path through the storm. Of course, safe was a relative term when you were flying into a cloud of death. Course laid in, sir? She said. Once we enter the nebula, we'll have maybe 20 minutes before the radiation starts cooking our brains. After that, we'll be flying on instinct and prayer. Communications Officer Steve Miller looked up from his station. I'm picking up Reaper signals from inside the nebula. They're using a coded frequency, but I can tell they're there. Lots of them. Weapons Specialist Ryan Cooper checked his weapons one more time. All guns loaded and ready. The electromagnetic pulse bomb is armed and waiting. Just say the word, Captain, and we'll light up the galaxy. Jake looked around at his crew. 12 humans about to do something that every smart species in the galaxy had said was impossible. They were scared, but they were also excited. This was what they lived for. All right, people, Jake said. Let's go make history. The Starfire accelerated toward the nebula's edge. The moment they crossed the boundary, everything changed. The ship's hull began to glow as radiation washed over them like a tide. Warning lights flashed on every console. The temperature inside the ship started to rise. Hull temperature increasing, Danny reported. Radiation levels at 300% normal and climbing. The collectors are working, but we're absorbing more energy than we can handle. Amanda checked her medical scanners. Crew radiation. Exposure is still within safe limits, but that won't last long. We need to move fast. The main view screen showed nothing but swirling red clouds. Lightning danced between them, creating patterns that hurt to look at. The nebula was beautiful in a deadly way, like a flower made of fire and poison. Lucy flew the ship through the ship, using instincts that had been built over years of dangerous flying. When the sensors said to go left, she went right. When the computers calculated a safe path, she chose the dangerous one. Human instinct against alien logic. Long-range sensors are down, she reported. We're flying blind now. I'm navigating by the color of the radiation and the feel of the gravitational currents. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it, Jake said. We're still alive, which is more. Then the computers predicted. The radiation was getting worse. The ship's hull was glowing bright red now, and the temperature inside was rising fast. The crew was sweating, but they were still functioning. Humans were tougher than most species. Realized. Contact, Steve Miller shouted. I'm picking up multiple signals ahead. Big ones. It's the Reaper fleet. The view screen cleared for a moment, and they saw them. 47 ships arranged in a perfect defensive formation around a massive vessel. That could only be the damnation. The Reaper ships were black and ugly, covered in weapons and armor. They looked like they had been built for one purpose: to kill. They don't see us yet, Steve reported. The radiation is scrambling their sensors, just like it's scrambling ours. Good, Jake said. Let's keep it that way as long as possible. Lucy, take us in low and fast. Ryan, get ready with that pulse bomb. The Starfire dove toward the enemy. Fleet like a hawk diving on its prey. The radiation around them was so thick now that it was hard to see anything on the view screen. But that worked both ways. If they could not see the Reapers clearly, then the Reapers could not see them either. Distance. To target, 2,000 kilometers and closing, Lucy reported. Their formation is tight. No gaps to fly through. Then we make our own gap, Jake said. Ryan, fire the pulse bomb on my mark. The Starfire screamed toward the enemy fleet at maximum speed. The radiation was cooking their systems now. Warning lights flashed everywhere, and the smell of burning. Electronics filled the air. But they were still flying, still fighting. 1,000 kilometers, Lucy called out. 500 kilometers. 200 kilometers. Mark, Jake shouted. Ryan hit the firing button. The electromagnetic pulse bomb shot out of their cargo bay like a bullet made of lightning. It flew toward the center of the Reaper formation and exploded in a burst of light that could be seen from space. The pulse waves spread out in all directions, washing over the Reaper ships like a tide of electricity. Their lights went out. There. Weapons stopped firing. For a few precious seconds, the entire enemy fleet was blind and helpless. Direct hit, Ryan shouted. Their electronics are scrambled. We've got maybe 30 seconds before they get their systems back online. That's all we need, Jake said. Lucy, punch it. The Starfire shot through the gap in the enemy formation like a bullet through smoke. Reaper ships drifted around them, their crews working frantically to restart their systems. A few of them managed to fire their weapons, but they were shooting blind. The shots went wild, missing the human ship by miles. We're through, Lucy reported. The damnation is dead ahead. The prison ship was even bigger than they had expected. It was like a flying mountain made of black metal and weapons. Turrets covered every surface, and shield generators glowed with blue energy. It was the most heavily defended ship any of them had ever seen. Shields are at full power, Amanda reported. They're strong enough to stop a fleet of battleships. Good thing. We're not a fleet, Jake said. We're just one very angry ship with a very stupid plan. Danny, divert all power to the forward shields. We're going in hard. The chief engineer's voice was tight with stress. Sir, if we hit those shields at full speed, the impact will turn us into scrap metal. Not if we hit them at just the right angle, Jake said. Lucy, remember what we practiced. Hit the shield at a 45-degree angle and ride it down to the hull. Use the shield's own energy to slow us down. I remember, Lucy said, but that was in a computer simulation. This is real life. Real life is more fun, Jake said. The Starfire accelerated toward the prison ship. The Damnation's weapons began to fire, filling the space around them with explosions and energy beams. But the human ship was small and fast, and Lucy was flying. Like her life depended on it, which it did. Incoming fire. Ryan reported. Plasma cannons, laser batteries, and something that looks like it could blow up a planet. Evasive maneuvers. Jake ordered Lucy threw the ship into a series of turns and rolls that would have made a circus performer sick. They dove under a spread of torpedoes, rolled between two laser beams, and somehow avoided a plasma blast that would have vaporized them. Shield contact in 10 seconds. Lucy shouted. The crew braced themselves. This was the moment of truth. Either their plan would work, or they would all die in a very spectacular explosion. 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. The Starfire hit the Sin. Damnation's shields at full speed. The impact threw everyone forward in their seats. Sparks flew from every console. The lights went out for a moment, then came back on, but they were still alive. We're through, Lucy reported, her voice filled with amazement. We're inside their shield perimeter. The ship scraped along the prison ship's hull with a sound like thunder. Metal screamed against metal. But they were slowing down, and more importantly, they were still in one piece. Landing thrusters. Jake ordered. Lucy fired the thrusters, bringing the ship to a rough landing on the Damnation's outer hull. They were stuck to the prison ship like a parasite, and the Reapers could not fire at them without hitting their own vessel. We're down, she reported. Hull breach in sections. 3 and 4, but were sealed and pressurized. Danny's voice came from the engine room, sounding tired but victorious. Engines are offline, but life support is holding. We're not going anywhere fast, but we're alive. Jake looked around at his crew. They were battered and exhausted, but they were grinning. They had just done something that should have been impossible. They had flown through a radiation storm that could kill most species, fought their way past a fleet of 47 ships, and landed on the most secure prison in the galaxy. Phase 1 complete, Jake said. Now comes the hard part. Amanda was already suiting up in combat armor. The hard part? What do you call what we just did? That was the easy part, Jake said with a grin. We just had to fly and shoot. Now we have to walk into a ship full of cybernetic killers and rescue a queen. Ryan Cooper checked his weapons one more time. Sounds like fun. When do we start? Right now, Jake said. Steve, you stay with the ship and keep our communications open. Everyone else, grab your gear. We're going calling. The crew armed themselves with everything they could carry. The inside of the Damnation was like stepping into a nightmare. The corridors were dark and cold, lit only by red emergency lights that cast long shadows on the metal walls. The air smelled like oil and death. Somewhere in the distance, they could hear the sound of machinery and the electronic voices of cybernetic guards. Captain Jake Sullivan dropped through the hole they had cut in the hull, followed by 5 of his crew members. Dr. Amanda Foster came first, carrying her medical kit and a plasma rifle. Chief Engineer Danny Wright had his tool bag and enough explosives to blow up a building. Navigation Officer Lucy Hayes carried extra ammunition and communication equipment. Weapons Specialist Ryan Cooper was loaded down with enough guns to arm a small army. Communications Officer Steve Miller stayed behind on the Starfire to keep their escape route open. Jake looked around the corridor they had landed in. It was empty, but he could hear movement somewhere nearby. The Reapers knew they were here, and they would be coming soon. "Danny, seal that hole behind us," he said quietly. "We don't want any surprises following us." Danny pulled out a welding torch and quickly sealed the opening they had made. The corridor was now their only way forward. There was no going back. Amanda checked her scanner. "I'm reading dozens of life signs throughout the ship. Most of them are cybernetic, but there are a few that look organic. One of them might be the Queen." "Which way?" Jake asked. "Detention level is 3 decks down. If they're holding her anywhere, that's where she be." The team moved through the dark corridors like ghosts. They had trained for boarding actions. But this was different. This was not a military ship with predictable layouts. This was a prison designed by madmen, full of traps and dead ends. The first guards they met were patrolling near a junction of 3 corridors. They were tall, thin creatures that had once been organic, but were now more machine than living flesh. Red lights glowed where their eyes should have been, and their arms ended in weapon attachments instead of hands. Ryan Cooper took point, his rifle ready. "2 guards, coming our way. They haven't seen us yet." "Take them down quietly," Jake whispered. Ryan and Lucy moved like shadows. They got behind the guards and hit them with electromagnetic pulse grenades that Danny had built. The guards dropped to the floor, their systems fried. "Nice and quiet," Ryan said with satisfaction. They dragged the bodies into a side corridor and continued deeper into the ship. The detention level was heavily guarded, but the humans had advantages that the Reapers did not expect. They were small and fast, and they fought in ways that no military computer could predict. When they encountered a locked door, Danny did not try to hack the electronic lock. He just blew a hole in the wall next to it. When they found a corridor full of laser barriers, Lucy did not look for the control panel. She crawled through the ventilation shaft above it. The Reapers had built their prison to hold civilized prisoners who would follow rules and use predictable tactics. They had not planned for humans who would punch through walls and crawl through. "Air ducts. Motion sensors ahead," Amanda reported, checking her scanner. "Looks like automated defenses." "What kind?" Jake asked. "Plasma turrets, energy barriers, and something that my scanner can't identify." Danny grinned and pulled out a device that looked like it had been built in someone's garage. "Good thing I brought my coffee maker." "Your what?" Lucy asked. I modified the ship's coffee maker into an electromagnetic pulse generator. "It's not pretty, but it should scramble their systems long enough for us to get through." He activated the device, and every electronic system in the corridor began to spark and smoke. The plasma turrets went silent, the energy barriers flickered and died, and the mystery device turned out to be a force field generator that was now completely useless. "I love human engineering," Ryan said as they walked through the disabled defenses. They reached the detention level after 20 minutes of crawling, climbing, and occasionally blowing things up. The corridors here were different, cleaner, but somehow more frightening. Rows of prison cells lined both sides of the hallway, each one sealed with energy barriers and electronic locks. Most of the cells were empty, but some held prisoners from across the galaxy. Aliens from species Jake had never seen before, all of them looking hopeless and defeated. They stared at the humans with surprise and something that might have been hope. "Spread out and search," Jake ordered. "The Queen has to be here somewhere." They moved from cell to cell, checking each one. The prisoners pressed against their barriers, some calling out in languages the humans could not understand. Others just watched in silence, not daring to believe that rescue might be possible. Amanda found her first. "Jake, over here." He ran to where Amanda was standing in front of a cell at the end of the corridor. Inside, sitting on a simple nettle bench, was Queen Zephyra of the Andorian Empire. She looked smaller than Jake remembered from their brief meeting at the peace conference. Her silver skin was pale, and her luminous blue eyes were dim with exhaustion. But she was alive, and when she saw the humans, those eyes began to glow with hope. "You came," she said in her musical voice. "The council said no one would risk it." "Yeah, well," Jake replied as Danny began working on the cell's lock. "We're not particularly bright that way." The lock was more complex than the others they had encountered. It required 3 different electronic keys and a DNA scan. Danny studied it for a moment, then pulled out his plasma torch. "Fancy locks just make bigger holes," he said, and began cutting through the barrier generator. The energy field flickered and died. Queen Zephyra stood up slowly, her legs shaky from days of captivity. Amanda immediately began checking her for injuries, while the others kept watch. "Minor dehydration and exhaustion," Amanda reported. "She'll be fine once we get her out of here." "Can you walk?" Jake asked the Queen. "Yes," she said, though her voice was weak. "But there are other prisoners here. Innocent beings who were captured with me. We cannot leave them." Jake looked around at the dozens of cells. Most held criminals and pirates, but some contained beings who looked like they had never hurt anyone in their lives. Merchants, probably, or diplomats who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. "Danny, can you open all the cells at once?" The engineer studied the corridor's control systems. "Give me 5 minutes, and I can unlock every cell on this level." "Do it." Ryan, Lucy, set up a perimeter. "Amanda, help the Queen. We're getting everyone out of here." Danny went to work on the main control panel while the others prepared for what was sure to be a fighting retreat. Opening all the cells would cause alarms throughout the ship. Every guard on the damnation would come running. "Cells are opening in 3, 2, 1, Danny announced. Energy barriers throughout the corridor disappeared. Prisoners began streaming out of their cells, some running, some walking carefully, all of them talking at once in a dozen different languages. "This way," Jake shouted, pointing toward the corridor they had come from. "Follow us if you want to." Live, the evacuation turned into chaos almost immediately. Some prisoners ran in the wrong direction. Others stopped to help injured cellmates. A few just stood in the corridor, too shocked to move. And then the guards came. They poured into the detention level from both ends of the corridor. Dozens of cybernetic killers with weapons, instead of hands, and no mercy in their programming. They began firing immediately, not caring if they hit prisoners or guards. "Take cover," Ryan shouted, returning fire with his plasma rifle. The corridor erupted in weapons fire. Laser beams and plasma bolts filled the air like deadly lightning. The humans spread out, using their weapons and Danny's improvised explosives to hold off the guards while the prisoners escaped. Lucy had found a maintenance shaft that led back toward their ship. "This way. Everyone through here." Amanda was helping Queen Zephyra toward the escape route when a plasma bolt nearly took her head off. The Queen stumbled and fell, and for a moment Amanda thought she had been hit. "I'm fine," the Queen said, getting back to her feet. "But we must hurry. There are more guards coming." Jake could hear them. Heavy footsteps and electronic voices echoing through the corridors. The entire ship was mobilizing to stop their escape. "Danny, we need an exit." The engineer was at the junction of 2 corridors, holding back a squad of guards with explosive charges. "Working on it, Captain. But these walls are thick." A plasma bolt hit the wall next to Jake's head, leaving a smoking crater in the metal. He returned fire, his shots taking down 2 guards, but barely slowing the rest. "We're outnumbered," Lucy called out from the maintenance shaft. "They keep coming." That was when Queen Zephyra did something unexpected. She stepped into the middle of the corridor and began to speak. Her voice was weak, but it carried an authority that made everyone stop and listen. "Attention all prisoners," she said in perfect galactic standard. "I am Queen Zephyra of the Andorian Empire. These humans have risked their lives to save us. Follow them, and you will be free." Then she switched to the Reaper's own language, her voice now cold and commanding. "Guards of the damnation, you are programmed to follow the chain of command. As the highest-ranking prisoner on this ship, I order you to stand down." For a moment, the guards actually hesitated. Their programming was confused. She was a prisoner, but she was also royalty. Her authority conflicted with their orders. The journey back through the Crimson Nebula was worse than the trip in. The Starfire was carrying 43 rescued prisoners in a cargo bay designed for 12 people. The ship's life support systems were failing. The hull was cracked in 17 places, and the radiation was slowly cooking everyone aboard. Captain Jake Sullivan sat in his command chair, watching the red clouds swirl around them on the main screen. His hands were shaking from radiation sickness, and his vision kept going. Blurry. But he was still conscious, which was more than he could say for half his crew. Chief Engineer Danny Wright lay unconscious in the medical bay, his body finally giving up after days of exposure to deadly radiation. Navigation Officer Lucy Hayes was still at her post, but she had to grip the controls with both hands to stop them from shaking. Communications Officer Steve Miller was taking turns with Ryan Cooper at the weapons station, both of them too sick to work full shifts. Dr. Amanda Foster moved through the ship like a ghost, treating radiation sickness with medicines that were running low. She had given most of her medical supplies to the rescued prisoners, keeping only enough to keep the crew barely functional. "How much farther?" Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lucy checked her instruments with eyes that could barely focus. "Maybe 2 hours to the nebula's edge, if we're lucky. And if we're not lucky, we'll drift here forever, another ghost ship in the Crimson Nebula." Queen Zephyra had insisted on helping with the injured prisoners, despite Amanda's protests that she needed rest. The Queen moved through the crowded cargo bay, offering water and comfort to beings from a dozen different species. Her silver skin was pale from radiation exposure, but her spirit seemed unbroken. "Your Majesty," Jake called to her from the bridge, "you should be resting." She looked up from where she was helping a wounded alien child. "These people suffered because of me. The least I can do is help them now." One of the rescued prisoners, an old merchant from the Outer Rim, grabbed Jake's arm as he passed. "Human," the alien said in broken standard. "Why you risk this? Why you save us?" Jake looked at the alien's face, scarred from years of captivity. "Because it was the right thing to do." The alien stared at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Human strange. But good strange. The ship's hull was groaning under the stress of the radiation. Warning lights flashed on every console, and the air recyclers were making sounds that they were never designed to make. But somehow, the Starfire kept flying. "I've lost the main navigation computer," Lucy reported. "I'm flying by instinct now." "Your instinct got us this far," Jake said. "Trust it." Steve Miller looked up from his communications station. "I'm getting some kind of signal from outside the nebula. It's faint, but it's there." "What kind of signal?" "Galactic Council frequencies. Lots of them. It sounds like half the galaxy is waiting for us out there." As they flew deeper into the red clouds, the ship's systems began failing one by one. First, the long-range sensors went dark. Then the backup power failed. The lights dimmed to emergency levels, and the temperature began to drop. "We're losing life support," Amanda reported from the medical bay. I've got people going into shock from cold and radiation exposure. Jake made a decision that went against every safety protocol in the book. Shut down all non-essential systems. Everything except engines, life support, and navigation. Give me every bit of power we've got. Sir, if we shut down the weapons and shields, we'll be defenseless if we run into more Reapers, Ryan said. If we don't make it out of this nebula, weapons won't matter, Jake replied. The ship flew on through the red hell, its hull glowing like a coal in a fire. The rescued prisoners huddled together in the cargo bay, sharing warmth and hope. Queen. Zephyra moved among them, speaking words of comfort in languages Jake had never heard. Contact ahead, Steve Miller announced suddenly. Multiple ships on the edge of the nebula. The main screen flickered and cleared for a moment, showing dozens of vessels waiting in the darkness beyond the red clouds. Ships from every major species. In the galaxy hung in space like a wall of metal and lights. They're all here, Lucy whispered in amazement. The entire Galactic Council fleet. Are they here to help us or arrest us? Ryan asked. Only one way to find out, Jake said. Steve, open a channel. The communication system crackled with static, but Steve managed to get a signal through. This is the human vessel Starfire, Jake said into the microphone. We have Queen Zephyra and 42 other rescued prisoners aboard. We need immediate medical assistance. The response came from Admiral Lisa Carter aboard the human battleship New York. Jake, you magnificent fool, the whole galaxy has been watching the edge of this nebula for 2 days. We thought you were dead. Not yet, Jake replied with a weak grin, but we're working on it. As the Starfire limped out of the Crimson Nebula, the gathered fleet surrounded them like a protective cocoon. Medical ships moved in immediately, their doctors and nurses ready to treat radiation poisoning and injuries. The Altarian medical vessel, Healing Light, was the first to dock with the Starfire. Blue-skinned doctors in radiation suits swarmed aboard, their advanced medical equipment humming with activity. It worked alongside Amanda Foster, combining human determination with alien technology to save lives. Queen Zephyra was the first to be evacuated, though she protested that others needed help more than she did. As she was carried to the medical ship on a stretcher, she reached out and grabbed Jake's hand. You did the impossible, she said, her voice weak but clear. You saved us all. We're not done yet, Jake replied. We still have to make sure everyone gets home safely. The evacuation took 4 hours. The rescued prisoners were distributed among medical ships from their own worlds. The Starfire's crew was taken to the human medical vessel Hope, where they were treated for severe radiation exposure and exhaustion. Jake was the last to leave his ship. He stood on the bridge, looking around at the consoles that had carried them through hell and back. The Starfire was dying, her hull cracked and her systems failing, but she had done her job. She had brought them home. As he was carried to the medical ship, Jake could see the Galactic Council fleet spreading out around them. Ships from dozens of species, all of them here to witness humanity's impossible rescue mission. Word of what they had done was already spreading across the galaxy. 3 days later, Jake woke up in a hospital bed aboard the Hope. His body ached, and his head felt like it was full of cotton, but he was alive. Amanda Foster sat in a chair next to his bed, looking tired but healthy. How's the crew? He asked. All alive, she said with a smile. Danny's still unconscious, but the doctors say he'll make a full recovery. Lucy's already asking when she can get back to flying. Ryan's been telling everyone who'll listen about how we destroyed a fleet of 47 ships. And the Queen? Fully recovered. She's been asking about you every day. Jake tried to sit up, but Amanda pushed him back down. Rest. You've been unconscious for 3 days. Your body needs time to heal. What's happening out there? Amanda's smile grew wider. Jake, you need to see this. She helped him to the window of his hospital room. Outside, the space around the medical fleet was filled with ships. Not just military vessels, but civilian craft from across the galaxy. Cargo ships, passenger liners, private yachts, and even small family vessels. All of them here to see the humans who had done the impossible. They're calling it the miracle of the Crimson Nebula, Amanda said. The story is spreading faster than hyperspace communication. 12 humans who flew into hell to save a queen they barely knew. Steve Miller's voice came over the hospital's communication system. Jake, you need to hear this. A new voice filled the room, speaking in the formal tones of a Galactic Council announcement. By unanimous vote of the Galactic Council, the crew of the human vessel Starfire is hereby awarded the galaxy's highest honor, the Star of Courage. For extraordinary bravery in the face of impossible odds, for risking their lives to save others, and for upholding the highest ideals of civilized space. Jake stared out the window at the fleet of ships. They're making too big a deal of this. We just did what anyone would do. No, Amanda said quietly. That's the point. Anyone else would have calculated the odds and stayed home. Only humans were crazy enough to try. A week later, Jake stood in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, wearing a dress uniform that felt strange after days in a hospital gown. His crew stood beside him, all of them looking uncomfortable with the attention. Queen Zephyra herself presented them with their awards. She looked radiant in her royal robes, her silver skin glowing with health. Let it be known, she said, her voice carrying across the hall, that when all others found reasons to say no, 12 humans found one reason to say yes. They risked everything to save strangers, and in doing so, they saved the soul of the galaxy. The hall erupted in applause from thousands of beings representing hundreds of species. But Jake was looking at his crew, at the 11 other humans who had followed him into the impossible and brought everyone home. After the ceremony, representatives from dozens of species approached them. The Altarians wanted to study human tactics. The Draknari offered military alliances. The Celestials revised their probability calculations to include something they called the human factor.